with no fear. The stage is set, all engines go. Welcome to the angle. Let's start the show. Hold on tight, the stage is set. Dig in deep with no regrets. Red and green bars leading the way. Welcome to the angle. No time to delay. Markets rise and markets fall. Atomcash is ready to answer the call. While the bulls charge hard and the bears dig deep, the angle will keep you on your feet. Hold on tight, the stage is set. Dig in deep with no regrets. Red and green bars leading the way. Welcome to the angle, no time to delay. Cashing in on the highs and lows where the wind of fortune constantly blows. No looking back, keep your eyes on the prize. Fuel to run with a fire that never dies. Hold on tight, the stage is set. Dig in deep with no regrets. Red and green bars leading the way. Welcome to the angle, no time to delay.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the most entertaining, intellectually stimulating financial podcast in the entire world. This is the Atomcash Angle, the show that flips the switch and floods the system with straight financial voltage. I'm Atomcash, and I'm bringing you the firepower your financial life may have been missing. Now, whether you're new to trading or a trading savant, I aim to turn complexity into clarity with a shot of adrenaline. Now, today we have an exhilarating lineup of segments to give you guys as much information as quickly as possible, as per usual. We're going to do some live trading, some market analysis today, but on top of that, NVIDIA had their earnings last night. Unless you've been living under a rock or maybe you just don't trade too often, you're probably aware of that. We're going to do a full ER analysis. So what we got out of their earnings report and what we also got out of their conference call, I broke it down, I watered it down into 10 key takeaways, which 9 of which were bullish, so pretty good. But 10 key takeaways that you should keep in the back of your head going forward with NVIDIA, just to give you some more analysis, because I know sometimes when you have these earning reports, there's a lot to break down, so I took the liberty of trying to distill all the information and make it palatable to bring it all to you. That way it makes it a lot easier for you to understand what's going on. Off the back of that, quick tiny little baby victory lap. And I posted about this on my X if you follow me over there. I've been telling you guys, and if you're watching right now, you've probably been watching the show pretty religiously whenever I'm live, so thanks for tuning in and thanks for supporting the show. But you would know how important this 183.30 level has been on the daily, mainly on the daily, but every time we've interacted with it since I've set it as an LOI on my chart, we've tapped it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, almost 9 times. And then yesterday after hours, before it got shot down on earnings, which we're going to talk about, it's not necessarily bad, we wicked it, 10 cents off, and then boom, right? Now NVIDIA's actually opening up almost flat, basically IV crushing both sides. And like I said during Monday's live stream, I mentioned that NVIDIA was going to smash their earnings. And I was right. They did. They had a fantastic earnings call, at least in my summation, as I said, 9 out of 10 points were bullish, and the one bearish one actually might have got swept under the rug a little bit here in pre-market. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But most bullet points were really bullish and really as expected. However, that's what the one concern I had with it trading so high. They had to blow expectations even further out of the water, which made it that much harder for them to perform and actually have a big move up. So now where we're sitting is very interesting. We're going to watch this live on the market open. I would love to see this expected move still get hit. And if you don't know, the expected move is roughly about 12 bucks. We're opening basically flat. So a $12 move today will be nutty. If we break this 183.30 level, which let's assume we open at 181, you got roughly $10 of upside there to hit your expected move ultimately. Should be pretty cool. That's what's interesting to me. And again, assuming your expected move wouldn't be off yesterday's close, I'm being more conservative, and assuming your expected move would take part wherever we open. So it's a little bit more of a conservative estimate if the expected move is still to hit. So that would be very interesting. So I will probably trade this at open. I will probably take next week's contracts as well as weeklies. I am more interested actually in getting this resistance to break, because as I alluded to, it is a hard line resistance, but earnings were really good, and they actually, the one bearish thing might be working on sweeping it under the rug here in pre-market. I'll just allude to it right now, and we'll get deeper into it when we bring up that segment at around 9:45-ish. We're going to talk about, basically, again, to break down NVIDIA's earnings, what to watch, good, bad, ugly, indifferent. But as of this morning, roughly, I think 30 minutes ago, NVIDIA was in talks with the White House for permission to sell the Blackwell chip to China. And NVIDIA actually offered the U.S. government a cut of Blackwell sales in order to secure that deal. The one bearish point that I had with their earnings was the inability to strike that deal, so to speak. Consequently, that is the one bear point, and that's really where we saw some weakness come out, because again, with this evaluated so highly, any sort of sign or whisper of weakness could drag the evaluation down, because everything else was really pretty good. So having that as a band-aid to the bigger problem, right? Because they basically said we're not selling to China right now, or we can't sell whatever geopolitical issue there. Slapping a band-aid on it right now, that could be enough to actually get it out of the gates here and break this 183.30 level into the open and really push. So I'm very interested in a long on NVIDIA today. Now, I could be wrong, but I wouldn't necessarily bet against NVIDIA at this point. You could see a quick, depending on where we open, quick move down and then a bounce here. And to reiterate, this level will not be an easy level to break, but if it does break, it will go with some fervor. You could also wait for a break and retest and bounce. So we'll see. We'll play it by ear. I'm just kind of getting you guys my thoughts before the open, because I'm sure a lot of you have either exposure or interest in trading NVIDIA today. So especially with it basically crushing both sides of the chain, there is a unique opportunity here. And anytime you have an earnings report and the expected move is missed on the overnight session and doesn't really happen, that typically gives you a unique opportunity to trade either which way. The expected move doesn't always still hit, but you still get a harsh reaction pretty quickly. So you're going to want to keep an eye on NVIDIA today, and that's going to bully around the stock market as well. Now, in regards to stock market, yesterday we made a new all-time high right here at 647.37, and now we're breaking above that here in the pre-market, and this is the daily all-time high. So anytime we hit on the daily chart, a new all-time high, automatically becomes an LOI on my chart, at least in this environment. So right now we're above that right now, so that's really good to see for SPY. If NVIDIA does hit its expected move, you could have roughly ballparking here about $5 to $6 share appreciation or price appreciation on the SPY. So today it's really not crazy to see 650 on the SPY or even higher. Full transparency, I do have a strangle trade on, which if you follow me on X, I also alluded to that. I have a strangle trade on for a 646 strangle. My break even on that is 650.95, so it's a little pricey. But because of the implied move on NVIDIA, all things considered, it was good risk to reward here. So for me personally, to get out of that trade with some money here, I do need a $3 move on the SPY, 0.5%. It's not crazy. But if NVIDIA does end up hitting that move here, especially to the upside. Now, I don't care either way because it's a strangle. Could go to hell too. But I'm more interested in the upside because I'm already closer to that point there. And 650 is going to be a key level to watch on SPY in general, just from a psychological point of view. So we'll see how we react there as well. Now, this does also change my viewpoint short term. And well, basically, how NVIDIA reacts today will adjust my viewpoint on my original SPY to 700 video. I made a point and why I'm leaning more bearish, or was leaning more bearish, and I was looking at NVIDIA as a potential catalyst to get the ball rolling in the corrective nature of the market, getting some sort of correction here. Really, depending on today, this is going to determine a lot near term, very near term on the market. We could just continue moving and continue pushing to the upside, especially with IWM still sitting in this gap here. Like I said, this is clear to go at least to 240, 239. So there's still markup potential here, at least for another $3 before reevaluation on small cap. So the way everything's leaning right now, I would say it's cautiously bullish, but depends on how NVIDIA opens and performs throughout the day today. So definitely a day to be on your toes. The other thing I wanted to talk about in regards to NVIDIA is where they're getting their money. And again, we'll talk about this in the segment where I break down their earnings, but 85% of NVIDIA's total revenue came from 6 companies. Those 6 companies, you could speculate, are the other like Mag 7 names, right? Or some degree of the Mag 7 names. I don't think Netflix would be a major customer of NVIDIA, but who knows, right? But like Meta, Google, Microsoft, Apple, probably Tesla, these are names that are more than likely these bigger customers. I'll talk about this when we get to that segment, like again, around 945, 950, but this could be a case of the snake eating its own tail. What do I mean by that? Super concentration. So NVIDIA's getting their money from other companies that are betting on AI, who are then performing either good or bad in regards to how AI is doing. So if AI starts to slow down, or these companies aren't seeing a return, or their capex slows, then not only is that company going to get killed, meaning Apple, Google, whatever, are going to see some downside because they're performing poorer, but they're also going to reduce capex or not spend as much money on NVIDIA products. So you kind of have a double whammy there, where one of these larger companies could take a fall if they don't perform, and that fall is going to weigh heavily, almost like an axe over the head of NVIDIA, because of how concentrated their business is in terms of revenue. One customer from NVIDIA brings in 23% of their total revenue. Second highest customer, 16, third is 14. And the other ones are roughly around 10%. So that's a lot, right? That's a lot for a lot of pressure on that one or two customers, right, to perform with what they're getting out of NVIDIA. So you do want to keep that in the back of your head as we tiptoe around each earnings, as we grind higher on the market. There is like a mega concentration. It's not just that we're solely focused on 7 companies, but these companies now are feeding into themselves, right? NVIDIA's getting their money from the other Mag 7 companies, or at least that's assumption here. Consequently, that could be a case of the snake eating its own tail, where if something goes bad, it's going to snowball down with all of them because they're feeding into each other. So keep that in the back of your head. All right, the market's going to open here in roughly about 40 seconds. Do me a quick favor if you haven't already, wherever you're watching in the entire world, whether it's X, YouTube, Instagram, wherever, do me a quick favor, like, follow, subscribe, anything. Do a little interaction in the chat. Say hi. Neegum always says good morning, so good morning, Neegum. But say hi to me in the chat. Drop a subscription if you haven't over on YouTube if you're enjoying the show, because once we get to 500 subscribers on that YouTube channel, this will become an everyday show. So if you enjoy the content, you enjoy hearing my lovely sunshiny voice early in the morning, giving you some energy as you approach the stock market, run over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button. I appreciate your support because I know you could be watching and listening to anything else. Thanks for stopping by. All right, market's about to open. Let's watch NVIDIA here on the open. And again, I'm looking for weeklies and as well as swings for next week here. Market is open and not moving. Not really moving at all. Okay, it's kind of shocking. I was expecting at least a sharp move. There you go. Expecting a quick move here at the open at the gates here. A little bit of a pump here at the pre-market high. So my plan here is if it either taps this, rejects backtest, then I'll go long, or it breaks through backtest, and then I'll go long. So we're going to wait here just a minute, and then we'll consider a long position. Actually, let me get this ready. All right. So now we've broken that support. And now you're at a new all-time high in NVIDIA. So I don't want to chase it here. It could just take off, which I have my strangle as, quasi-exposure. I do want to see it reject on this back test. Remember, this was a strong resistance. 10 taps of this now. On this back test, that's where I'm interested on the long. It could also fail it and come all the way back down. So I don't want to necessarily rush this. IV will be crushed because of that higher IV, but IV could continue, well, it could crush and then start to expand again. You know what I mean? So you don't necessarily want to rush it right out the gate. I mean, if you did, on calls, you probably did just fine in a few seconds, but not really my move here. All right, let's see if we bounce here. We just kind of tapped it there, the low of that candle. Look at that, 183.31, off by a penny there. So we're going to give it a minute or two because it could fail and come back down to that. We tap this pre-market high, so right here at 181.94, that'll be my long entry on a call expiring tomorrow. I'm also looking for weeklies for next week as well. Morning, Toby, or I guess good morning. You said pickle, so I assume that means good morning. So now we're failing beneath that resistance point. Let's see. Again, that number we're watching here is 181.94. That's that pre-market high. I'll probably look for... We could do 185s. Yeah, we'll do 185s. It's going to be... you might get a little bit of crush there. Continued crush. 61% IV. IV percentile is 47, so IV is expensive. So if you're on the buy side, you want to keep that in mind. You know what I'll do? Yeah. So here is the pre-market back test. All right, I'm looking right at the 185s right now. All right, I'm in on the 185s at 146. And then I'll look at the 185s for next week. I'm going to start adding some of these 185s for next week. Obviously a swing, 265 average. Okay, so now I'm long on the weeklies as well as next week's. As for a swing, again, I'm pushing for that 183.30 break. Here, let me get those contracts up on the watch list here so you guys can see. And I talked you through the game plan, so you guys know exactly what I'm looking for here. We'll look at the chart. I've got the contracts right up here. Again, that's the 185 call for this week and next week. The 185 call for this week, I filled at 146. And the 185 call for next week, swing is at 265. Now, again, these are going to be a little hot. The IV's a little hot on these, so you want to take that into account with your risk. Looking at, and look where the POC is. It's literally right on that pre-market high. So I'm looking for this back test here. The rejection, again, of that 183.30 area, getting back above that pre-market high, and finally with a harder break to the upside here. Remember, the expected move on NVIDIA was $12, and we have a $1 move as of right now. So I would rather bet for NVIDIA than against NVIDIA, especially off those earnings. So we will see. Back testing the open right now. Could sweep down here back to that 200 MA on the daily, but I'm not really going to sweat it too much. I think if I'm patient here, we should get things moving in the direction I see favorable here. Looking at the market right now, made a new all-time high up at that 148.08 level as the new all-time high. I think it's going to be more than likely we see 650 today, assuming NVIDIA does perform. And assuming NVIDIA does break, again, that key resistance level is a big resistance level on NVIDIA, and breaking that should lead to a very strong volume pop, or you should look for higher volume on that move if and when it does happen. SPY back testing that all-time high that it made yesterday. NVIDIA coming down, and I said there's a risk factor of tapping the 200 MA there. So we'll keep an eye on that. Roughly around this 180 area should really get a little bit of a bounce and go. You know what? I'll put my money where my mouth is. And I don't do this very rarely do I do this, but I'm actually going to get a few more of the 185 weeklies. It's rare. If you're in the community, you know it's very rare, but all right, so I grabbed a few more of those. Roughly around 72 cents-ish. And that's how violent these are, obviously, because of how high that IV was. You had a quick move down here. You know, the evaluation of these contracts is going to get railed a little bit. My new average on that is 110. So, again, like I said, it's very rare that I add into a position that's red. But I do think this 180 area holds, especially with the 200 MA here. Should hold, should backtest, and should push to the upside, in my opinion. Especially with that news coming out, how we're going to try to sweep things under the rug a little bit here with the China mishap. So keep an eye on that. I'm going to leave the 185 swings for next week just alone for right now. I have enough exposure there, so I'm not worried about it. I went a little bit heavier on the 185s for next week, obviously because they have more time. So more time gives me more flexibility. I do want to go over our catalyst watch because we did overshadow that like I'd like to do in the beginning of the show. And we'll see if we got anything coming down the pike for today. And it doesn't really look like it. You do have a White House press briefing at 1 o'clock and Trump to sign some executive orders at 3:30. Outside of that, nothing too much today. If we look forward to tomorrow, Friday, if you're long Alibaba, you have earnings calls in the morning. So if any Chinese exposure or something, you want to be conscientious of that. You have PCE data tomorrow morning, so that's very important, as well as consumer spending, pre-market. And my favorite, Michigan sentiment, Friday morning. I feel like every day is Michigan sentiment, but you got that tomorrow morning, a little bit after open. So overall, pretty quiet day today and tomorrow. You know, a few things here to keep an eye on, but nothing too, what's the word I want to use? Egregious. Nothing too crazy. All right, as foretold, that 180 area did hold so far on NVIDIA, now pushing to the upside there. Still a little red on those 185 weeklies, currently trading about $1. I have a $1.10 average on those. And again, the game plan here, break this 183.30 and mark up and honestly have them go in the money. High a day on NVIDIA right now is 184.47. I will remind you a $12 expected move was supposed to happen, implied move. So we'll see if the market gods will have it rally or decline. Either way, I do want to see a push one way or the other because, like I said, I do have a strangle on SPY, and I need SPY to either go up or go down. I don't really care which way. It needs to just go. So we will see. We'll keep a tight eye on NVIDIA, as I'm sure a lot of you are trading it. I'm now green on my 185 weekly calls, and my next week 185s are still a little red, a few shekels shy. But not too bad. What I'll do more than likely, since I bought in a few more, when we tap this 183.30, depending on how volume looks, I'll probably shave some off just to reduce risk. Now, the other thing you want to keep in mind here, you do have that red SAR coming down. So if we do see some momentum form here and push to the upside, that red SAR could give you a little extra momentum there to push and break that very key level. I will also remind you, including today's tap, that is 10 taps at this level. 10. That is a lot. It is a strong resistance, but if it breaks, it will break with some fervor, and that's the kind of thing that you want to have exposure to. If you're betting on a break happening, that's something that you want to keep your eyes on because that is where you can make a lot of money very quickly if you're right. So we like to talk about risk to reward, being risk on, risk off all the time on this program. If you're taking a risk, those are the kinds of risks you want to take because they will pay off more than you would typically lose on that kind of trade. So it's something that you want to be mindful of when those opportunities do present themselves. That's why it's important to do your technical analysis and watch key levels like this. Looks like that was a good little time for me to scale in a bit more, as right here is basically my break-even price. As you can see on the side here, my two contracts are right up here. My 185 weekly, so that's one right here. I have a 110 average, and then my 185 for next week, I have a 265 average. So we'll see if we can build some level of a base here. You have your pre-market base here. Push to the upside, swept beneath it. Now you're going to kind of see some level of indecision here. I probably would see it fart around here for a little bit before getting a push one way or the other, in my opinion. So give it a few minutes here and come back. SPY just kind of bouncing around yesterday's new all-time high here at 645.37. Again, it did make a new all-time high again today, but looking like it's finding, as you can see again in the pre-market, very similar to NVIDIA or how NVIDIA looked. Liquidity is here at the all-time high. There is a lot of price discovery, a lot of bouncing around here. Indecision, I guess, is the word I want to use. Meanwhile, the Qs looking pretty healthy here for another leg up on the Qs here momentarily. Conversely, IWM gapping up and losing the gap as of right now. The daily chart does look pretty good, though. But at least intraday right now, that's where you're seeing some of the weakness here. Let's flip over to our sectors and see what's going on across the sectors, across the whole market. Our defensive sectors are all opening red and also grinding lower, which is a good sign typically if you're a growth investor. Meanwhile, your tech is green and pushing the upside. So this is typically risk on behavior where you see your defensive sectors pushing red, and specifically, at least in the last few years, tech being green. That's the market saying that they're looking to go more aggressive on growth and taking money, potential rotation out of your defensive names and pushing it into growth conversely. Looking around the market elsewhere, real estate grinding lower, materials grinding lower, industrial's pretty flat. Healthcare not looking too hot. That is not great. What's yesterday? Yeah, healthcare breaking yesterday's lows right now. Keep an eye on XLV. Banks moving down a little bit, nothing too much to report there. Pretty flat. Consumers discretionary also pretty flat, and comm services pretty flat. So this is where we're seeing the most movement here, is in our defensive sectors actually selling off while tech is trying to push and break to the upside here. So that is, again, indicative of risk on behavior in the market. So that's looking like what we're going to see here. Also supported by how the Qs look and how IWM is kind of grinding to the downside here. You could see some money coming out of your small cap names to go into your larger cap names. So if we see Qs go to the upside and we see IWM move down, we could see a divergence there where bigger tech names, which we'll go through in a minute here, should get some level of a rally. IWM. NVIDIA hugging that POC and again that pre-market range. So we're going to keep an eye on that for right now. Meta still below those levels that I give you guys. I say them on every stream, but 775, 777 area underneath that. It's a little bearish. We didn't break out of my sandwich that I spoke about on Monday. So again, your sandwich is when you have your short-term EMAs and your long-term EMAs. They start to pinch, get tighter and tighter and tighter. And then when that happens, you tend to get a hard breakout either which way because you're fighting short-term trend with long-term trend. You're still getting pinched here on Meta. So this is cooking up for a bigger move here in the near term. Looking at other technicals here, you're still maintaining bullish momentum with your RSI. Your MACD is bearish for now, but it looks like it's starting to level out a little bit with a red star here. So if I was to take a bet on Meta, I would lean more bullish than bearish. If you can get some momentum behind itself, you're more than likely going to mark up here on Meta, at least in my opinion. Microsoft is a very interesting one where this 500 level, and this is a name I played, if you're in the Discord, I played this name I think 2 or 3 times yesterday. I was watching this one like a hawk yesterday. You're at a very, very interesting point on the chart here. And again, another sandwich where you're getting pinched between your short-term and your long-term EMAs and MAs. And you're right around that really obvious psychological level 500. On top of all of that, your POC up here is 504.34. So you've got a lot in terms of technicals in this very, very, very tight range on Microsoft within a shaky RSI. It's not really showing bullish or bearish momentum, but it's very neutral. This one I'd be a little careful on. It really isn't showing clean momentum either which way, in my opinion, with the exception of yesterday, which I played, pat on my own shoulder. But you want to keep an eye on this one because it will move fairly soon. It's just not yet. So keep an eye on Microsoft. And ever since earnings, it's been pretty gnarly. Like, it has not having a fun time. All-time high was made off of earnings at 554.54, and since then just kind of grinded down, lost about 10% after gapped up essentially on those earnings. So going back to, again, that POC, trying to find price there and see where the evaluation is, if it is actually higher or is lower than 500. So that's kind of the story here with Microsoft as it sits right now. Google continues to push to the upside. As I said, as I will continue to say on this program, your canary in the coal mine for how the Mag 7 do and will continue to perform is Google. As long as Google continues to trend to the upside, your Mag 7 more than likely are going to lean more bullish, and is continuing to do so. It's basically every time it taps the 8 EMA, bounce and go every single time. Now, I will say it's also getting pretty hot. Look at this weekly. It's getting pretty hot. Nice rally and move, and it's not showing signs of slowing down. The monthly's even flipping here with good momentum on the RSI, so you could continue to have an even stronger push here on Google. You're going to want to watch out for these intraday, or not these intraday, these few day periods with consolidation or getting some level of a pullback, but every kind of dip is being bought on Google. So there is showing a lot of strength in the market. And if you are someone who is a tech investor, a growth investor, Google is something, even if you're not long Google, you're wanting to take a keen eye on Google and keep an eye on it, because again, this is going to be your tech leader, so to speak. This is going to be what you want to watch for tech to continue to push to the upside, at least in my opinion. Taking a peek at Apple here. Another interesting one. I did speak about this one on Monday, and ever since I spoke about it, I said it's probably going to bounce around in this range here up until NVIDIA reported earnings, and kind of got egg on my face as of yesterday, because yesterday it pushed up and now kind of hovering around a little bit higher. I did anticipate it to kind of stay around like this 227 area. And like I said, yesterday it pushed up higher, and good move for Apple. Now kind of want to see if it can start to sustain this. If it can start to sustain this general area, specifically breaking above this daily candle here, which is 230.74, you're only about 30 cents off here, you more than likely would get a continued push to this localized high of 235.12, and then eventually a 236.85 tap. So Apple's looking pretty solid here if it can find momentum. You'll notice that the high a day today actually did technically break this August 8th high. However, did not follow through. So today could be the day, may not be the day. This is something where you want to watch. If it breaks that, you could also set an alert here. I'll do it for you guys on the program here. Let's set it at, we'll set it a penny above today's high. Oh, that doesn't even pop up on your screen, does it? No, you guys can't see that. Edit, price above 230.89. So that would be an area in which I'd consider calls. That very well could happen today, especially if NVIDIA pushes to the upside. So that's something you want to set an alert for. Keep an eye on that. Now, Tesla, back to that resistance point. I'm seeing a lot of people talk about Tesla on social media, how they're getting all excited that Tesla's breaking out and it's so great. You're not out of the woods. I'll continue to tell you, you're not out of the woods. You're not out of the woods. It needs to crack 360. You're close, but no cigar yet. Now, there is a chance they can get there. Obviously, you're only $9 away, right? You're pretty damn close. If you want some extra little security here, you could even wait for 367.71, so another $7 higher, this localized high here. But really, for me to be a bull on Tesla, it must break 360. Yesterday, the high was 335.39. Didn't really go anywhere. So for Tesla really to have any footing here, it must get over 360. If it doesn't, and now it's at this point where it's rallied a bit, if it gives back this, it gives one red candle, honestly, on the weekly, it's not going to be good. It will draw back. I will continue to say this, and maybe I'll make a clip compilation. If it doesn't break 360, and especially after this kind of move here, if it gets back under, like in this case, 339, with momentum, so with volume, it's going to draw all the way down. I'll continue to say this, down to this like low 220 area. 212.64 is my lowest. 225 would be where I'd start being interested in on going long. But that, I'm going to keep saying that till I'm blue in the face. If it can, it needs to push a little harder here. It's close. If it doesn't, and it doesn't do it soon, if it gets any level of bad news or anything like that to pull this lower, it's not going to be good for Tesla. really not short term. Amazon's not really interesting to me at this point in time. Anyway, going back to NVIDIA, looks like we got a little bit more red price action here. Breaking the 200 MA and breaking that 180 area, no bueno at all. So that might be a sign. I'll give this today to 177. I'll give it 177.50. 177.30. Let me look at the daily real quick. It's a low here. The most I'd give is 176.57. And then reevaluate there. This would be the 10th rejection. So actually what I would do, if it really doesn't bounce and continue to the upside here at some point, and it's going to be volatile today, and I'm giving this way more rope than I typically give a trade, mainly due to the fact that I know it's coming off earnings. And I know it's going to be volatile. If it doesn't get any sort of sustained movement to the upside, I would actually flip short on NVIDIA near term, at least to get back to this like 165.94 area that I have an alert waiting for here to push it even potentially lower. You do have the 50 MA to catch it around 170 though. But if it doesn't stay north of like 177.50, 176.50, so about that range there, it's going to draw lower. Look, I hope it doesn't. They had good earnings. I liked it. I'm hoping by looking at this that this is just sweeping up some liquidity here. Some people want some cheapies. Consequently, obviously, the market's pushing down as well. So not much to see there in regards to the overall market. I need either at this point, a $5 push either which way here on the SPY for my strangle, which I will also unfortunately end up taking an L on if it doesn't get there by noon. So going to have to watch NVIDIA very, very, very closely. Now for me, I've actually had a pretty good week. I don't think I've had a single loss thus far. I've made a good amount of money. I've been very careful, very cautious. And now today's the kind of day where I want to be a little bit more aggressive with trading. But kind of want to see if NVIDIA can actually pick a confirmed direction here. Now I know it sounds crazy. It's down 2%. It is a confirmed direction. It's been bearish the last 5 minutes. Not yet. Not yet. Let's wait and see. Not yet. I have my levels. We'll come back and look at it. Now, with that being said, I think I want to roll into that earnings report analysis. You guys like that, or you want me to look around for another potential play? Now, I will tell you something. How about I share this with you guys? Something that I'm looking at for, again, is trading Soundhound here. North of 12.17, which is basically right around here. It's pretty bullish, actually, at least near term for like a short-term trade. Had a nice pop off of earnings, came down, sold off, built a little bit of a base here, coming back to that sandwich idea, right? I'm looking for it to hit 1265-ish, at least by the end of the week. Hoping that off the back of a good report by NVIDIA, there should be a little bit more hype around AI, so that should have a little bit more wind at its back. So it might take another week to get there with some momentum, depending on how NVIDIA continues to move into the end of the day here, or into the day as a whole. So we're down near this 177.50-ish area. We'll see how it reacts there. And then at that point, I will make my decision. But I do think this is where, if there was a bottom, it is a bottom. I'm not going to over leverage into my trade. It is what it is. Let's roll into, ooh, the market get a pop? Market's getting a little volatility. Do we have news here at 10? I don't believe we do. You do pending home sales, but I shouldn't do anything. Yeah, not much, just the White House press briefing. Now, I have to check this every once in a while because sometimes Trump will randomly announce that he's doing like a press conference or something. And I check this in the morning. It's like the first thing I check is like, okay, so you're going to be a busy day or not for like news catalysts. And I'll come back and I'll do a show with you guys. And I'll be like, well, that wasn't there before. And it's like Trump having some sort of like press conference or something that I was not privy to. So that's what you got to watch out for. Anyway, let's get into the segment. Talk a little bit about NVIDIA and their earnings. Sorry, just pulling up some notes here that I jotted down. All All right, and I will also record this for you guys. That way you can go back and watch it if you want to. I'm going to wait 1 second because I do want to see if we get a bounce for it right around here on NVIDIA. Like right here, if bulls step in right here, you should go back to 180-ish like pretty quickly. So I want to watch volume here. Volume's been rising on the fall, but you're making some bottom wicks here, so it should get a little bit of a rebound here. Let's see, let's see. 5 minutes pretty hot there too. Can the bulls defend? Leaving a tweezer bottom perhaps. IWM getting a bounce off the lows. Q's getting an ugly rejection there. SPY also getting an ugly rejection. Yeah, if NVIDIA breaks this, it's not going to be pretty, I think. This is the what's it, the linchpin? It's got to hold on right here. At least for that shorter term trade. Definitely for that shorter term trade. Definitely needs to hold on right here. Nah, losing it. You're losing it, Mr. Krabs. Gonna see the volume on close of this candle here. That's a gnarly daily candle. Not good. Not good, not good. We'll see. Give it 1 or 2 minutes. And the level 2 on the buy side is just getting chomped. You can watch it right here on the side here. They're just getting demolished. There are times where I'll mark out a level like that, like right there at that 177.52, and I'll say, yeah, that's the risk. And I always give it 1 or 2 minutes because unless my risk is mega tight. In this case, it's not that tight because I understand, like my sizing's appropriate because I understand that it's coming off ER, that it could whiplash very quickly. That's kind of what I'm waiting for here to see if we push back above that very quickly. There's times, especially when you're playing like a news event like this, or quasi news event, that you want to give yourself a little bit of rope because you're not really going to lose too much money. For example, they were at like 35, they're now at 28. Like all in all, it's not like that much to be patient and wait and give it a minute or two to see if the bulls do in fact step in or not, at least in this scenario, and vice versa. It goes for the same thing on the bear side. Q's not looking too good. SPY's actually kind of holding its own here. All things considered, high a day on SPY was 648, so you did have a $3 drawdown from the highs, or $2 drawdown, I should say. Mostly fueled by the Q's, and IWM actually, like I said, had that bearishness in the beginning. You are seeing a clear divergence between the Q's and on IWM. Interestingly enough. All right, NVIDIA, you're going to get 1 more minute of my time. If it doesn't pull up here, then we are pulling the ripcord. At least on those weeklies. Because they're going to continue to decay, especially if it doesn't get a harsh rebound here. So I want to not have a more sustained loss in that regard. And the one thing you could say, guys, if you watch the program, I don't try to sugarcoat things. You'll know if I've lost money or if I made money. You'll see it all. I know a lot of people like to hide that thing or sweep it under the rug. Sometimes I lose. Just most of the time I win. And this is part of the times where I'm using a little bit of discretion to wait here. Because it just looks like it dropped too quickly on higher volume. It looks like a lot of fear. And based off their results, it wouldn't shock me to punk out some people on the pump, have it drop, which I got in right around here, around that pre-market high level, scare more people, add liquidity, and then break the highs. It's happened. That's what I like to look for. Okay, I gave it 1 minute and it was green. Let's give it 1 more minute. Again, that 177.52, that's the area I'm looking to recover here and push to the upside to actually get a reversal on NVIDIA. Once we get over that, I could start doing my segment because I'm pretty confident we'll at least get back to 180 and then I can reassess. So yeah, you're talking about a $3 swing from here. Do with that information what you will. If you like that, I'm already long, so you already know where I stand. I would not be shorting NVIDIA here. Especially if it rejects 177.52, then you could consider a short. Because again, you're looking for a $12 move ultimately. Now it doesn't always hit, but you're already at a $4 move, so you could have another $8 there. But you got to see if the bulls can break it first or if they reject. Which I think, based on how the chart's looking, we're going to break it and push to the upside. Just a matter of being a little patient. Wicked it and leaving a wick behind as of right now. MACD's trying to curl up here. RSI's in the gutter, so bears have control in terms of momentum. But if the bulls can break that 177.52 on top of that, flip RSI a little bit higher, that will show a reversal on the momentum side of things. From a technical standpoint, you also have that red SAR coming down here, so it'll give you another little added boost here for NVIDIA to push back to the upside here. And you can see in real time that 177.52 area, how important it is. Like, you're watching the numbers change here, you're seeing how we're bouncing around it. What'd that close at? Look at that close. Look at that candle. 10:02 candle. What's that close say? Right up here where it's a C. 177.52. Closed on it. I'm telling you guys, if I give you a number, it's an important number to know. Know that number. So you're not out of the woods by any means yet. If you do break, so you want to look for a break of this little shelf here. So you notice how you had the close of the candle there, close the candle there, close the candle there, open of this candle here, which is 177.91. You're going to want to look for a 177.52 sustained break, staying over that. For a reversal to be in place, you need a push over 177.91 with volume. Needs to push with volume. But everything else is supporting that thesis right now. You have red SAR, MACD could flip. I need this RSI to cook up as we break, though, as well. That'll show that bulls are trying to take the momentum here. You're on that red 1 minute SAR. It's kind of fighting around it. Again, that number is 177.91. You're not there yet, though. There it is. You broke the 177.91. Now you need to see some power through that. Some momentum. A good green bar here will make me a little happier, and I can go about my business. We'll see. How's the market looking? I mean, if you really, really want to squint your eyes and go on a shorter time frame, you probably have like a little inverse head and shouldery look here right below this LOI. So you're going to want to watch 646.19 for a potential break, and that old all-time high 646.50, which I have to change, but that is still the old all-time high there. All right. Now I feel pretty confident we're going to get some level reversal at least to 180, so I can go and do my segment. Cool. All right. Anyway. Let us see. All right, guys, you ready? Before I do this, do me a quick favor. I ask you guys twice a stream. I'm going to ask you once right now, wherever you're watching, interact with the stream however you may like. Drop a comment, say hello, like, share it. Follow me if you're on X or Instagram, whatever. But interact with me some way on the stream. Any little bit of support really goes a long way. I know a lot of you listen to me while you're at work, your phone's in your pocket, whatever. So at some point, you pop open the screen or pop open the phone and do some sort of interaction. The algorithm loves it, and that's all I ask from you in order to keep putting on this wonderful show for you guys. And don't forget, if you haven't already, pop over to the YouTube channel. Once we hit 500 subscribers on YouTube, this will be a daily show. So if you enjoy the content here, make sure you go over there and subscribe, and I will bring you even more content. Now, let's get into the NVIDIA ER analysis. Okay. So yesterday, NVIDIA reported earnings, and there was a lot of things to go over. And I know, especially being retail traders, there's a lot of information. You may not know where to look or what to do. So I boiled down all of their earnings basically into 10 bullet points that you need to know going forward if you are a long investor or just in general, you have an interest in NVIDIA. So we're going to break these down to 10 little bullet points for you guys, go over what you need to know for each bullet point, and highlight if they were bullish or bearish bullet points. Now, I will say 9 out of 10 were bullish bullet points, pretty solid, with one bear point, which was kind of swept under the rug today, but we'll talk about what that is as we go. Now, the first bullet point, obviously, record revenue achievement, right? Total revenue was $46.7 billion, up 56% year over year and 6% sequentially. So that exceeded outlook, even with a $4 billion decline in H20 revenue, which is crazy to me. Data center segment drove the growth with 41.1% billion. That in itself is up 56% year over year. Obviously, that reflects strong demand for AI across multiple platforms. Now, that is obviously a bullet point. Here's your only bear bullet point for NVIDIA earnings, at least in my opinion, is China sales uncertainty. There were no H20 sales to China in quarter two, which led up to a $4 billion decline, which I kind of just alluded to in the last bullet point. Now, if this issue is resolved, there's a potential there for another $2 to $5 billion in Q3, which would be great. But what I like and what they did going forward, they excluded this from guidance for geopolitical reasons, which I think is extremely smart. So now they're not including that in their guidance. So if you're a bull on NVIDIA, that could lead to a good surprise, right? Extra money if they resolve it. And if not, they're just pretending like it's not even there, meaning it's not going to be a negative necessarily. It can only really be a positive because they're not including it in their guidance. They're not saying we're going to think that this is going to be included with our potential going forward. It's just not there. And if it happens, which is great ultimately. But that's your near-term bearishness on NVIDIA. Now, all the other bullet points I'm going to list for you are bullish bullet points. They blew it out of the water. An EPS beat. Non-GAAP diluted EPS was $1.05. That was up 54% year over year, which beat the analyst estimates of $1.02. So 3-cent beat there. And your GAAP net income surged $26.4 billion, up 59% year over year, obviously supported by gross margins and operational efficiency, which they're doing a little bit better job at, which is fantastic. Gross margin expansion is your next bullet point. So we just alluded to how they beat expectations with the EPS. In general, their gross margins also doing fairly well. So if you don't know the difference, gross is before all the fun stuff you take out of it. Gross is before you take all the bad stuff out of it. Your net is what your take-home pay is ultimately. So just looking at gross margin in general, basically how much money they're able to pull in, improved 72.4%. That's 11.9 points sequentially due to mainly like a favorable product mix. And about $180 million in H20 revenue inventory release. Now, non-GAAP gross margin reached 72.7%, which positions the company for mid 70% margins by year end, especially as Blackwell ramps up, which I'll talk about here in a second. Now, obviously, the market's forward-looking, so you want to be aware of their guidance, and that's actually another bullet point from their earnings report. Their strong quarter three guidance. They projected revenue of $54 billion plus or minus 2%, which indicates roughly around a 16% sequential growth without assuming those H20 shipments from China. Remember, I just spoke about that. So we're assuming that that's not even included in this evaluation, or at least in this forward guidance. Expected non-GAAP gross margins of 73.5%. It reflects the confidence, in my opinion, of Blackwell production and in general of AI infrastructure demand. Another point we're going to talk about here coming up. Now, we just spoke about Blackwell a few times, but the Blackwell platform ramp is something else that I saw during both their earnings and their conference call as something that can be a more bullish point. Blackwell revenue grew 17% to record levels with the GB300 production shipments starting, and full production is now underway roughly at around 1,000 racks per week. The other point you want to note is that Blackwell Ultra also generated tens of billions of revenue. In general, as this continues to ramp up, this is what's driving a lot of revenue for the NVIDIA, at least in my opinion, longer term. So you want to keep an eye on Blackwell in general if you are an NVIDIA investor. Now, there's smaller segments I have listed here as well, which also performed really well. So they had their network revenue. smaller. It's still $7.3 billion, up 98% year over year and 46% sequentially. That's driven by Spectrum Ethernet exceeding $10 billion in its annualized run rate, which is pretty fantastic. On top of that, another bullet point here are all the other segments. So we have sovereign AI growth, gaming, and automotive. We'll go through them one by one. So your sovereign AI growth, this is interesting because they expected over 20 billion in sovereign AI revenue this year, which is more than double last year. So a lot of growth here in general by global investments. The one thing that highlighted that caught my eye was the EU's 20 billion euro for AI factories. Obviously, NVIDIA is going to really take advantage of that. Other projects like the UK's AI supercomputer, they mentioned that, can highlight how NVIDIA is going to play a role not just in companies, but in government, which is really interesting. Like, this company can really get its tentacles kind of in everything at this point. Looking at their other segments, gaming did pretty solid as well. 4.3 billion, up 49% year over year and 14% sequentially, driven by Blackwell GeForce GPUs and the RTX 5060 shipments. I'm a gamer. A lot of you play games or whatever. What I like about them is these chips are pretty solid for a long period of time too. I'm not someone who needs to update my rig all the time, but some people are like that. There's a whole secondary market for NVIDIA chips as well, where people are just upgrading to the newest chip, and there's a lot of people who just want the newest chip. So that demand still seems pretty healthy, up 49% year after year is really interesting to me. What I would find more interesting is when we get the new consoles that come out, if they are new consoles or if they're just going to end up being computers from both like Xbox and PlayStation, if they end up getting custom chips from NVIDIA. So that's a little area in which that could be interesting to me as a potential growth area. But even knowing that, this business in itself right now is $4.3 billion. That's a big business on its own. But when you compare that to the rest of their business, right, that is like 10% of their total income, right? To the 10% of their total revenue. It's still big, but it's not even the whole picture. It's just a tiny piece in the whole grand scheme of things, which is crazy when you think about it. Lastly, their automotive revenue. This is where offers the most potential growth, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on it. So their automotive revenue reached 586 million, which is up 69% year over year. This is the only one that doesn't have a B in it. This is million, right? As we get more robotics and smart cars and all this other kind of stuff, there could be a rise of physical demand in AI, right? Of more interacting with like tangible hardware, right? Something like getting more NVIDIA chips into vehicles wouldn't really surprise me. Having more vehicles on the road that are Tesla-esque, I guess you could say, longer term wouldn't surprise me. I think this area of their business is undervalued at its current point in time, with it being such a tiny fraction, basically 1% of their business. But the potential there is very big in my opinion. So that's something, as long as we're driving cars, I think that is one part of their business model that is really kind of undervalued at this point in time. So overall, we're going to summarize what we have here from their earnings, and then two other things that just came out that I want to highlight to you guys. That way you're aware of it off the back of their earnings. So ultimately, obviously, these Q2 earnings demonstrated robust demand for AI. Record revenue, margins, all exceeded expectations, even despite the China headwind. So even though we had that China news there, that was the only bear point, everything else blew it out of the water. The strong guidance and the Blackwell ramp shows that there's continued momentum into the following quarter, which is something you want to see. Now, here's what you want to watch going forward. And then we have updated news and one last talking point I want to talk about. Going forward, the key items you want to look for next quarter is the ramp rates of the new Blackwell products and that resolution of that China licensing deal, that China issue, right? Which again could potentially unlock $2 to $5 billion more in sales, which again they've excluded from their guidance. So there is more money there. To put into perspective, again, their gaming revenue is $4.3 billion. This one China deal could usurp their entire gaming business as a whole. That's how big that is potentially. That one deal. So that's what you really want to keep an eye on going forward, and how potentially new AI models could drive further data spending. Now, as early as this morning, so this is the next morning after NVIDIA reported earnings, NVIDIA is now in talks with the White House for permission to sell Blackwell chips to China. And NVIDIA would offer the U.S. government a cut of Blackwell sales in order to secure the deal. So they're already rolling the ball in this direction. Now, obviously, they know it's an area in which they can make money. And if the government can make money, then they're going to want to take advantage of that as well. So seeing them trying to move the ball in that direction is roughly making NVIDIA, again, you have that 10% buffer. If it is a $5 billion sale, essentially, and again, their whole revenue was whatever, it was 50 billion or 70 billion. Hold on, I got to check. Total revenue is 46.7 billion. So you're talking about roughly 10% more evaluation on NVIDIA here from this one deal. That is I don't even want to say it's a hidden gem within NVIDIA right now, but it is a stronger possibility of it performing really well. With that being said, if they get this deal underway, I don't think it would be short-sighted to think that we see NVIDIA tap $200 by the end of the year, especially if we get that deal. Actually, I would say even sooner, probably by the end of October, if they can line up this China deal, and off the hype alone, I would see a sharp appreciation in NVIDIA share price. Now, before I let you go, I want to leave you with one part of NVIDIA's earnings that can be a level of concern or something you want to be a little safe with. 85% of NVIDIA's revenue last quarter came from 6 companies. Almost all of its money, right? Almost 85%, so 9 out of 10 almost, of their business came from 6 companies. Those companies, the first company is 23% of the revenue, second company is 16, third was 14, and the preceding 3, 11, 11, and 10. So that is a concern. Here's why. Obviously, these customers more than likely are the other Mag 7 names. Your Google, your Microsoft, your Apple, your Tesla. They're more than likely those customers, right? Okay. That super concentration could be a case of the snake eating its own tail. Well, what do I mean? Well, if we see, and we're making assumptions here that it's Meta or Google or Apple, if we see faltering there with their ability to take advantage of AI, I guess I should say, strike while the iron's hot, right? And grow a business off of it and lower spending, or they realize it's just not worth it anymore, they cut off spending, whatever they do there, it will be a double whammy on the market overall, because it's going to obviously impact NVIDIA, but it's obviously going to impact, it's obviously going to impact the individual name, whether it's Apple, Meta, whatever, but then it's also going to hit NVIDIA. So if you're someone invested in the stock market as a whole, you understand that the Mag 7 is roughly, whatever it is, 30+% of the SPY, right? So in the event that something like that does happen, some sort of news like that does happen, you're going to have downside to that one specific name. Even if it's one name that says that downside, you have downside to that one specific name, and then downside to NVIDIA because they're theoretically losing a customer. If they lose one of these customers, they're losing 10% of their revenue. So that's roughly, what's that, 4 to, depending on how you're looking at it, $4 to $5 billion, depending on which customer they lose. If they lose their biggest customer, that's $10 billion to, what is it, $10 to $12 billion. If, again, cutting off all ties completely losing the customer, which is a worst case scenario. But just keep that in the back of your mind as you trade, or if you are long NVIDIA, because that is a real risk longer term to NVIDIA. However, I will say, based on these earnings and based how it's sitting, I don't want to leave you with a fearmonger statement. NVIDIA is very strong here. They continue to be strong. And as long as that AI demand keeps up, I think NVIDIA is actually positioned itself very, very, very well into the near future here to hit at least $200 before the year end. In my opinion, it will hit that before the end of October. However, I would look for a catalyst to get it there. And in this case, I would look for that China licensing deal to push it there, push it in that direction before their next earnings report. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. All right, even though I'm live right now and there are no comments below, what do you guys think? That was my NVIDIA earnings breakdown. Like, dislike. Thought that was pretty solid. I tried to water it down and make it easy to digest. And again, I recorded that, so you can go back and listen to it and watch it. But I tried to take every little bullet point and make it more digestible and understandable for hopefully the layman. So let me know what you think in the chat right now, if that was helpful, or if you have questions. If you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat as well. Negum says, love it. Toby says, very nice breakdown. Thank you, gents. Thank you, thank you. Well, there's my Soundhound. Starting to get a little bit of a push here. Full transparency, I'm long the 12.5 calls on Soundhound right now. I am underwater on those, but I am still long them right now. So I'm looking to see a push there near term. I'm concerned about NVIDIA's few customers, though. Yeah, it's a real concern. That's why I brought it up. It's a real concern. I mean, that's why I said, if, let's just pretend Meta, Google, whoever, if one of their biggest customers either cuts, so that's what you want to look for. If you're long NVIDIA during these other companies' conference calls, if they lower their CapEx, especially the Big Mac 7 I'm talking about, if they lower their CapEx spending, specifically on AI, then it's going to be, again, that sneaking the tail thing. It's going to impact NVIDIA negatively. So that's what you want to watch for. That's your canary in the coal mine for AI. I mean, in general, the first company to do that, that's going to be 100% the canary in the coal mine of AI getting too hot and the bubble potentially popping. The first time one of these major companies goes, I don't see the advantage in AI at this point in time. The first time someone on an ER call says that, it's going to be bad for NVIDIA the next day. Or even after hours. Like that's a statement that's going to push things into bear territory, in my opinion. Still have a big position, but this makes me nervous for the long term, not so much short term. Yeah, that's understandable too. I mean, there's no doubt that you're saying that NVIDIA is a very strongly, highly evaluated business. Its price is very high. But you also have to keep in mind, it's at that evaluation because the growth is so high. And that's why I kept talking about on this program, the higher the stock price is into earnings, the higher the expectations. Because even if they blow it out of the water, which they did, they'd have to blow it out of the water even more because the expectations are that much higher. And even the smallest sniff of weakness can spook it. And that's actually what you saw when they mentioned the China thing after hours yesterday during the earnings. You know, it didn't react too positively. It didn't get, brought back to the upside, even though earnings were fantastic. It didn't push higher, right? So that's the kind of thing you want to keep an eye out for. Everything has to be like squeaky clean, perfect, and growth is fantastic for it to sustain this evaluation. But like you said, short term, more than likely going to continue a bull trend here on NVIDIA. And from a technical basis, again, if it breaks this 183.30, which is what I'm betting on today, it's going to break it. We're $5 away. Sounds crazy, but I'm betting on this level breaking. If this level breaks, it's going to get a markup today pretty aggressively. It is calming down quite a bit, so we'll see. But getting over that 180 and basically the 200 MA here is going to be the start. Watch for momentum to come in there. If we see momentum and volume come in, you're going to mark up pretty quickly, at least to that resistance area, and then reevaluate from there. Like super short term. We're talking about today. But like near term, the next month or two, I was looking for potential weakness heading into September and using NVIDIA kind of like that first linchpin of longer term downside, at least a drawback, right? That correction that I was theorizing on the SPY may not happen. I'll just be straight up with you guys. May not happen. We're just grinding higher. I still think the market does need that pullback, but it is, we're sustaining the rally here. It's a matter of seeing what tomorrow really looks like, because tomorrow's end of month. So especially if NVIDIA breaks that strong resistance point, that's going to pull a lot of positive, euphoria essentially into the market. It's going to pull a lot of positive vibes. It's a horrible word. I hate it, but positivity into the market. And I will continue to remind you guys where Meta's sitting, where Microsoft is sitting, where Apple's sitting, not so much Google, but those three, they're all at a very critical point on the chart, where on the daily, where they're going to get a big move either which way here. That's why I was theorizing that NVIDIA's earnings, which again, the day's still young, could still happen either which way, mind you. I'm theorizing that NVIDIA is going to push the decision making on the daily of Apple, of Microsoft, of Meta, which by the way, during that video, Look at that. My alert fired off. Can you see that on the chart? You can. So see that yellow bell means the alert fired. During the video, the alert fired because I picked 1 penny higher, and it went to 230.90. And that was also, this blue line on my chart, it's a 200 MA. So breaking the 200 MA here, just use that for simplicity's sake, that more than likely is going to lead you to a bullish move on Apple intraday here. So there's a good Apple setup cooking here. If you do want a long Apple, it's got to sustain, it's got to break over it. But if it can, I like the bull opportunity on Apple today if it can break over this level. Set a few schmeckles higher at this point. Hatchet says NVIDIA is an amazing business. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, honestly. Toby says, just by companies not spending as much as now because they don't see much more ROI on AI products, that could cause a chain reaction. Interesting to watch out for. Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to with the snake eating its own tail thing. Because NVIDIA gets so much of its revenue from so few, I almost want to say individuals, but companies, right? If those companies, or even one of them, decides, we're going to pull back, or we don't see the use case or the potential long-term value, whatever the phrasing is, right? That's going to cause a potential cascading effect because the other companies that invest in AI might get spooked in general, right? And they also go, we're going to cut back our spending too. And now you have a cascading effect where NVIDIA, not only that one customer pulling back scares NVIDIA shareholders, but the potential for a snowball or cascading effect from these other bigger names going, we're going to pull back on spending as well, could wreck NVIDIA's share price in a matter of days. Like, it could cause a sharp downturn. Now, I'm not trying to fearmonger or anything. I'm just saying that is the potential that is there. It can happen. Will it happen? I find it unlikely, but it would be disingenuous for me to speak about their earnings and not highlight that as a risk factor, right? So there's a risk factor. But ultimately, I would not be bearish on NVIDIA here in general. You could be bearish intraday as long as it keeps rejecting that 183.30. If it breaks, though, it's going to go. But outside of that, I would not be bearish on NVIDIA. You're betting against the house, and the house is going to win, in my opinion. I think, especially off this price action, especially where it's holding, they're going to try to sucker in, there being market makers are going to sucker in more people to short NVIDIA thinking it's crashing, whatever, take more money, and then pump this thing higher. Because this thing always, if you watch NVIDIA, this always suckers in bears, always suckers in shorts. The bears stay too long, it rallies, short squeeze, right? And short squeeze being relative, it's a massive company. But you understand what I'm saying. Oh, I forgot to mention, they also had a $60 billion buyback, which I didn't list as an important thing, mainly due to the fact that it's kind of a drop in the bucket for a $4.3 trillion company. But hey, cool. Good that they're doing that, I guess. Depends who you ask. I'm actually kind of surprised so far by today's price action on the market. Surprised meaning I was anticipating more of a reaction. Like, even if NVIDIA's earnings were relatively muted, which, down 2%, not necessarily muted, but overall the reaction on the market, you're flat. And this week has been a very flat week. Now keep in mind, this is a very important point because I'm not going to be live tomorrow. We have a holiday weekend. Market will be closed on Monday. So it's possible that the market is... Hello, cat. My cat came to visit. I will show him off because he decided to jump in my lap. Here's a cat. It's possible that we see a grind. Hey, bud. It's possible that we just see kind of a sideways grind on the market throughout the end of the week. Definitely tomorrow, what you want to watch out for is really short-term, basically at the open, price action being maybe a little volatile, but then... Thanks. Someone's needy. Don't rub on the microphone. You're going to blow everyone's ears out. All right, go away. Go do cat things. Thanks. All right. Thanks. Toby says the cat is greater than me. Thank you. you want to keep your risk kind of tight going into the end of the week. And I was really anticipating on making my lion's share of the money today, which ironically I made my lion's share of the money of the week yesterday. I was really anticipating day trading kind of aggressively today off the back of NVIDIA's earnings. But like I said, we're seeing kind of, I don't want to say a muted response on NVIDIA, because we're not. We're seeing some level of a response here, obviously. Way under the expected move here, again, for now. But across the board, looking at other Mag 7 names, very choppy. Like, we're not really picking much of a direction overall. Google's got a nice push here. But outside of that, really kind of tight price action, exception of Tesla here. But very, like, indecisive. So it is possible we just kind of eat a pin here today. I would look, again, at NVIDIA for your potential. Once it breaks 180, if it breaks 180, you're more than likely going to get a rally up to that 183.3. And if that breaks, you're going to get a hard push. So the market isn't necessarily bearish or looking dead on the day thus far. I will say volume is very low, which is alarming to me with it being Thursday before holiday, because that means volume could be dead tomorrow, which if you're a day trader, you don't want that. Here's why. A little quick lesson on risk if you don't know this already. It's not a matter where things are more bullish or more bearish when there's low volume. When there's low volume, it takes fewer market participants to move price. So theoretically, let's say you have $1 million and you buy $1 million worth of SPY, right? And let's say your purchase moves SPY, for simple numbers, 10 cents, right? If there are fewer sellers, because every day there's buyers and sellers, right? Theoretically, and this is all in theory. If there are fewer sellers, let's say there's half as many sellers, because the volume's half as much as what it normally is, and you buy $10 million of SPY that same day, your normal impact on the SPY, maybe it's 10 cents. And again, using whole numbers for simplicity, maybe today it's 20 or 30 because there's fewer people on the ask side of the trade and on the bid, right? There's fewer people on both sides of the trade. So when an order comes through, price can move more aggressively because there's lower periods of liquidity. So it's not that things are more bearish or more bullish. It's that things are more risk off because there's fewer people trading. And that makes logical sense. If you ever trade weekly contracts, options on a name that doesn't have a lot of liquidity, or is a very spready name, right? The bid is maybe $1 and the ask is like $5. That has so few market participants on that particular chain that you can bully the price around very easily depending on where you potentially get a fill. Same argument, but with a stock. And obviously the spreads are a little tighter, but it's the same kind of theory with the general market as a whole. So my parameters that I use when I trade, I look at the 1 minute and the 5 minute. Especially if I'm day trading, I want to look at the 1 minute volume, and I want 1 minute volume to be at least 100K. Now midday, I can give it a little wiggle room, maybe go down to like 80K. Right now I use the VMA, so that's that blue number right here on my my little mini volume chart here. And you can see my VMA, or your volume moving average, is 60K. So that tells me on average through the day right now, or at least this period of time I'm looking at on my chart, the average amount of volume it's moving is 62K per 1 minute candle. So that's under my personal threshold of 100K. So that tells me the market has fewer market participants from a volume point of view. I go one step further and look at the 5 minute. So this will confirm or deny my suspicions, typically. I look for at least 500K on the 5 minute candles. So the VMA reflects 619.19. Now, because it's 5 minute candles, you're taking a wider time frame. I have to look at the individual candles here for the time frame I'm looking to trade in. So if we look at the last like 15 minutes here, you can look at the volume right here at the top of my screen. This candle was 512,000, 530,000, and this is still an open candle with 325. So volume on the 5 minutes good, even though volume on the 1 minute isn't too good, right? So that tells me I'm probably still okay to day trade. There's probably still good market participation. But because the 1 minute's a little lower, that could be indicative of volume starting to taper off. So it's kind of keeping an eye on it. At least from, again, this is all day trading, right? From a day trading point of view, I want to keep an eye on things. So why I'm telling you that is for tomorrow, because when tomorrow rolls around and we're a day before a 3-day weekend, it's very, very likely that the market participation is going to be much lower, and you're going to want to use whatever you want. But a parameter such as this, where you can determine where price action is and how much volume, how many market participants there are, if you do decide to trade, because you may want to steer yourself more risk off than risk on, in those environments, because now you understand that price can kind of get bullied around in those environments. Okay, I will leave you with this since I'm still long on NVIDIA and underwater on it at the moment. 5 minutes looking like it's turning around. You're making higher lows here. I would look for the breach of this high here, 179.08, to confirm a reversal. More conservatively, I would look at the 200 MA, or if you want to keep it super simple, 180 as a whole number. Getting over that 180. If we don't get over that 180 by like 11:30, right, about an hour from now, and I'm just eyeballing 5-minute candles here. If we don't get over that 180 area by 11:30, I'm probably going to walk on the trade. As long as we're sustaining higher lows on the 5-minute here, it's still valid in my opinion, even though I'm underwater on it. But again, you're buying high IV. The IV can expand again, especially if you break this high. You're more than likely going to flood to the upside here, and these 185 calls on the week could go in the money. So it's good risk to reward still, in my opinion. It's just a matter of getting seeing if the bulls can push it above the 200 MA here on the 1 minute and on the 5. Getting over that 180, confirming it, and then you're more than likely going to mark up $3 pretty quickly. So just for context, you're currently trading 178 on NVIDIA. These are 185 calls. Using the most conservative math, we only look at the delta and assume no gamma, no vega, just only look at delta, right? To make it the most simplistic equation, the most conservative estimation. So you have a delta 14 right now. You are... If our target's this 183 area, that's about a $5 move. So if we would times the delta by that $5. And again, conservative metrics here gives you a 70-cent appreciation, which puts me back at entry. So realistically, I know I'm going to be at break even. Well, let me double check my IV. All right, IV went down a little. I think when I entered, it was like 58. It's right now 53. So assuming that, realistically, my break even is going to be right around here, this 181 area, and especially earlier if IV expands. But even at the most conservative metrics, I should be at break even if we tap this resistance area one more time today, which I think is a very likely scenario. So either which way, I'm willing to be patient on this one because of how the Greeks are currently sitting. Cool. That's an ugly rejection on SPY. I think that's all I'm going to leave you guys with today. Volatility is pretty flat. It's back in this 14 area, or this 15 area, I want to say. Yeah, nothing else really catching my eye here. We'll check our sectors real quick, see if anything changed. Defense is starting to pick up again, with the exception of consumer staples grinding lower. Tech saw some bearishness. Obviously, we were watching NVIDIA, so that's not unexpected. It's looking like the rest of the market's kind of grinding to the downside right now as a whole. Healthcare very weak. Mentioned that at open. Ooh, consumer discretionary took a little nosedive there, mainly due to Tesla. Yeah, I would be careful. Watch your volume. Obviously, day trade if you see something lovely and you want to take it. This price action is a little concerning because you're bouncing between a few LOIs here. You've got this old LOI at 646.19, that old all-time high at 646.50, and that new all-time high formed yesterday at 647.37. You're more than likely going to ping pong around in here unless NVIDIA breaks and rallies. This is your catalyst. You want two catalysts for today if you want to be a bull. NVIDIA breaking 180, pushing to this 183.30 resistance. If that breaks, you're going to like 650 today on the SPY. I'm like, I'll what do the kids say? I'll stand on that. All right, whatever. Standing on business on that, on the bull theory. So if that breaks, you're going to 650 today, more than likely. Your other catalyst here, you want to watch Apple. If Apple can break the 200 MA, look, 2 taps already. If Apple breaks this localized high, you could set an alert. Set an alert at 230.91. If it breaks that and it sustains above that, so you want to look for a break with volume, you're more than likely going to get an upside push on Apple. In fact, I'm contemplating getting in a little early here, and right now while I'm live before I leave you guys. I would probably look at the 232.50s. I'll wait because it could just tap the 200 again and reject. But I would look at the 232.50s if you get a break. The safe thing to do would be let it break, back test, then go long and keep a tight stop. The other option is open a long down here, which is only 20 cents lower, and keep a tight stop there. And you can ride a little bit of upside there. Yeah, it's more than likely how I play it. Or you can play the 230s. You can play a little in the money just for a little bit more safety there. Yeah. Okay. That's going to wrap it up, guys. Thanks for watching the Atomcash angle. Hope you enjoyed the show. We got a lot of viewers who turned in today, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that NVIDIA segment as well. I know a lot of you may have had questions or concerns, so hopefully I did my job by wrapping it up to the best of my abilities. And some will say you need an edge to trade. Well, I like to look at things from a different angle, and that's always what you'll get right here on the Atomcash angle. Have a great rest of your day, guys. And remember, precision beats prediction every damn time. I'll see you next week.
The time has passed, and that's a wrap. You're armed with the angle and your plan of attack, while the show is at an